There is no brainer why Google dominates search. Today, 85% of searches are driven via Google. If the largest icons of the world or the largest creators were to use a computer, it would have been an Apple. Earlier, even before memes became a thing, I think was the Amul ad that you would see in your newspaper or on hoardings. TikTok is very relevant. It'll be a stupid thing for any country to not invest in India first as opposed to the rest of it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of our podcast, The BigSmall Talk. This platform brings people to share their stories where small steps in their life made them achieve bigger goals. Today, we have with us Mr. Abhinay. Hello, Mr. Abhinay.
Hi, nice to meet you guys and nice to be here.
And thank you, Abhinay. I'm very happy and excited to host you today. I hope you'll enjoy this podcast.
Looking forward.
Okay, to start with, you are an economist and have worked in the field of advertising. So with your experience, I want to know how you brought these two together and how this combo worked out.
I think that's a very interesting question. The applications of economics in advertising is something that people don't often really see, but something that drove me very closely to advertising. Things like consumer behavior, understanding psychology, sociology, economics with why we make purchase decisions. And that's essentially what advertising tries to do, right? So I think those were the motivators that got me to apply economics in the field of advertising. And fundamentally, there is this economist called Hal Varian. He is, in fact, the chief economist of Google, and 95% of Google's revenues is driven through ads. And the algorithm for which the auction was actually written for that was actually written by this economist. So I think the marriage of economics with advertising is a lot early than a lot of us seem to believe today.
That's quite interesting. Like people doesn't much relate these two topics, but often if we find people like you who are pursuing both the things simultaneously, then we can obviously identify this relation.
Right.
So coming into advertising, ads are now playing a key role in this digital era. We have two things, brands and consumers. While brands want data from various, say, cookies or maybe pixels and all, they're capturing data and they want data. While consumers prefer privacy first. So they don't much offer data. So even if we take an example, recently Apple has an update where it blocked all the third-party cookies. So, and Facebook and other companies didn't like that thing. So how can we create a balance between brands and consumers in this context?
I think that's an interesting question. It's been there since the dawn of GDPR. Basically, one of the first laws that was ever into play to sort of protect consumer rights in terms of data sharing and privacy, right? But the reality is that I feel as consumers, we want convenience, and for the trade-off of convenience, we actually don't mind giving up a little bit of privacy. So, just a quick example, right? There's this browser called DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is a headless browser, and when you go into that, it assumes no information about you. It stores zero cookies. So every time you go into that, you're almost like a new user, so to speak, for the system. Whereas you have Google, on the contrary, that knows a lot about you and hence offers you a lot of information. Now, when you search in something like a jacket in DuckDuckGo, you could be surprised with the result. And with Google, you'll actually get something that you might want to buy. So and to that, there is no brainer why Google dominates search. Today, 85% of searches are driven via Google, or a lot more in many countries. Apart from, I think, China, Russia, and a few other countries, Google is still dominating search, right? And that goes to show that people don't mind giving up a bit of that privacy for that convenience. That said, I think, yes, people are now being aware of the kind of information that they let out. So to ecosystems that they are comfortable in giving up their information so that they get relevant results, like I gave to you in the example of Google, people don't mind actually doing that. So it goes hand in hand in some sort. And I think that the ecosystem and consumers are going to evolve in that partnership of, or the trade-off rather, of giving off their information versus convenience. But I think that's something that's going to continue to evolve. And as consumers, we will keep giving up information for relevant services.
And even I think people are interested to give data to some extent, which they don't feel it as like breaching their security or something, and they're okay with giving their primary data and all. And also to highlight, you have worked on an article or a paper where you told about cookieless world in the advertising. And I wanted to just highlight that article, and I want you to share a little on that as well.
Awesome. So while I was at Dentsu, I've since then joined ProfitWheel, which is an AdTech startup. But while I was at Dentsu, I was fortunate enough to author one of the industry's first guidelines on marketing in a privacy first world. And I think that was very relevant because it gave like an overall of why certain laws came into place, the changes in the ecosystem that you just brought up, right? Of what Apple is doing, what Google has done, and so on and so forth, right? So I think it was important because there was a lot of buzz around that in the environment, but no one really had created guidelines for how can publishers work, how can marketers work, how can advertisers play a role in this entire realm, right? And I think that was important to be at least one of the first documents to create that. And soon after then, that report was widely quoted after that. And I think that that base of understanding of where everyone's at and what the changes were, I think that's what we try to sort of do in that document.
Great. That was like a new kind of article which I have recently gone through. To make it more interesting, we will now discuss on the 5-star Kabali ad, which you have where you have worked as a media manager. So can you share some experience on how you worked on it?
So this goes back to my day where I was a media manager at Cara, which was Dentsu's media agency, and we had just won and entered into the relationship with Cadbury. And 5 Star was one of the brands that were in my portfolio. I was looking after the chocolate brands of Mondelez, and I was handling their strategy. And we thought, what association could we drive to sort of push up sales of 5 Star? And in some ways, it's not that the brand was struggling, but it really sort of hit a threshold beyond which growth was a little difficult. So I think Kabali was coming up in the South, and we thought, why not tie up with the largest superstar that sort of exists and try to form a brand association? And I think the idea of that entire campaign that went on after that first was seeded in some ways through this association, which then we worked with the creative teams. A lot of inputs came in from there as well. And I think it was an overall team effort that everyone sort of put in, but it's primarily how do you create a 5 Star product and match it with a 5 Star superhero and rather a superstar, and then create magic. And I think it did very well for the brand. Their sales went up by more than 5 or 10% in that period.
Great. Being from South India, I completely relate to that ad. I was more excited at that particular moment when I saw Rajnikant promoting like 5 Star and all.
Yeah, it was a fun association.
Now, I want to highlight one of your statements where you said the ideal campaign is the one which has a simple message in it. And recently, I gone through one of Leonardo da Vinci's statement where he said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So I could find a little relation between these two statements. And also from these two statements, I can say that it's not easy to create a simple message for any brand. Even brands like Apple and others are trying to do so. But there are some challenges that exist in creating simple message to reach out to people quicker. So what do you think are these challenges that exist in creating such simple messages?
I actually think that brands that do very well, right, firstly talk very little about their product and talk more about the ethos of why they create a brand, right? And if you look at like some of the most memorable campaigns, they've been with the simplest of taglines, right? Just look at Surf Excel in India, Daag Achhe Hain. I mean, it in a way adds humor, everyone gets it. It's a simple message, but then such a powerful theme, right? You mentioned about Apple. I think one of their most iconic campaigns were Think Different, two words that eventually and ultimately put Apple way beyond its competitors in that sense, right? They said if the largest icons of the world or the largest creators were to use a computer, it would have been an Apple. And that was the ethos of the Think Different campaign. Very little is spoken about the product, more focus on the creator, two words, and that was an iconic campaign. Look at Nike, just do it, right? Their taglines are so simple. Their ads are often never about the shoe, it's always about the story and the journey. and the fact that you got to just keep doing it and keep moving forward. And that, I think, is where simplicity over trumps anything else in that realm when you're talking about communication that resonates.
Great. Often we also relate to very simple ads. That's what I feel so. And also, you have worked in the field of technology as well. You have equal weightage to both advertising and technology, and you very much related both these fields. So technology is also playing a key role in advertising, and it is advancing a lot. Recently, I have gone through one of a marketing campaign by which is named Shah Rukh Khan My Ad by Cadbury.
Right.
And I was really interested when I saw that where Cadbury used machine learning to make Shah Rukh Khan the brand ambassador for every retail shop.
Right.
So I want to know what are the other emerging technologies in the field of advertising and which one do you like the most?
I think that's a very interesting question. Technology and advertising, like I said, right, is not very far apart, because when you talk about companies like Google and Facebook, they're using a lot of information that they have on the back of a lot of data sciences, which is your machine learning and AI, to actually figure out the most relevant ads for you to even click on in that sense, right? I think when you talk about emerging technologies, not just limited in the field of advertising, but I feel that its application can be widespread. Things like GPT-3, right, or ChatGPT, which now sort of overtaken the internet, where you've basically consumed all the world's written information, put it up into an algorithm, and then you've created it to be a conversational interface for you to interact with. And today, people are asking it all sorts of questions to predict future trends, which is difficult to do, but it does give you some answer. You're asking it relationship advice. You're asking it to create an ad campaign. And it's very hard to even sometimes discern between whether it was machine created or human created, right? So I think that technology such as GPT-3 or ChatGPT or whatever you call it in terms of what's powering the backend is something, and is my favorite piece of technology, by the way. But you also have things like DALI, which basically you could convert text to an image and then maybe create a creative out of it, right? So I think that those are the trends that are sort of emerging in advertising, where people will use it, like the fact that information and insights are at your fingertips today. What sort of enables a human to be a lot smarter and interact with this technology so that it creates the next path-breaking idea.
Great. You talked about ChatGPT and all. They are really disrupting the fields where they are in. So talking about disruption, if we consider every disruption, it is taken both positively and negatively, considering it may be the industrial revolution in the 19th century or the present artificial intelligence. So in a positive sense, these technologies are developing or improving our standards of living. But as nothing comes for free, so there must be some cost that we are paying to get to the better standards of living. So what do you think that cost is?
I think that's a great question. This has been a topic of debate from the Luddite fallacy of the Industrial Revolution that you just sort of mentioned, right? Like, are machines or mechanized means of production going to take over jobs, right? And I think today the biggest threat for artificial intelligence that people feel is that it's going to replace me. I mean, ChatGPT is something that we just discussed. The fact that you can consume all the world's knowledge and then give a response almost at par as a human-like response means that people are under threat that their jobs are going to be morphed. In fact, Dell did a study that said that I think in about 25 or 2020 or 2030, more than 60% of the jobs that we know today won't exist. And I did a TEDx on this as well. The fact of the matter is that I just feel that these are things that empower and are meant to augment effort rather than replace effort. So when you talk about what is the short-term cost that society has to bear or people have to bear, I think it's the adjustment period that you learn to work with these technologies. Just as Tony Stark learned how to work with the Iron Man suit and then became one of the good superheroes, right, in the Marvel universe. So I think it's much like that, right? There's so much that you could do. Like medical progress, you're talking about surgeries that happen with very less invasion, completely robotic today. The genome of COVID-19 was in a way worked on by machine learning so that you could arrive at a vaccine a lot faster than you would have probably had, which of course had collaboration from the medical field around the world to sort of go through with that. But the fact that you can use technology for all sorts of things today is just unimaginable. And I think the positives way outweigh the short-term adjustment cost that society might have to bear in terms of learning to live with these technologies.
Definitely, technology, if used in positive sense, is helping us a lot. And also saw your interest in using technology in the right way, maybe in the cancer development and all. You are quite interested in these fields as well. You said that the positives of technology is completely outweighing the negatives. What do you exactly mean by this statement?
So I think like technology always has positive and negative uses, right, of it. I mean, if you talk about nuclear power, right, it could be used in the positive sense of powering up clean energy in that sense, and it could be in the negative sense of an atomic bomb, right? So I think that every piece of tech has a good use of it and a bad use of it, and the judicious and the right use of it is always upon the human being, which is why I even feel that as everyone thinks that technology is going to automate everything and then replace the need for human beings altogether, I actually don't think that's going to happen, because you're going to require someone to constantly keep a check of those algorithms to make sure that there's no biasness. You're going to require people to learn how to use them in the right possible way. So I think that's what I meant by that statement, right? Like, there's so much that you can do to augment human endeavor. We spoke about it in cancer research or in the medical field to determine a new drug. We're looking at it in the in the context of advertising and context creation. We're looking at its applications. I mean, a lot of things are powered by artificial intelligence today. Even your virtual agents of chatbots that you sort of interact with through your bank or anything like that, right? So you're looking at tremendous application and positive use of that. And the only drawback I feel, yes, there could be issues of unemployment, especially in countries that are developing like our country, where automation is a key threat because a lot of your population is probably unskilled or semi-skilled in that sense, right? And then that's when the government and private sector work together. Maybe you create upskilling programs, maybe which Niti Aayog is doing a good job of. Maybe you create unemployment doles that a lot of countries like Australia actually do for their people, right? So I think everything is going to evolve from that sense. But whenever there's a disruption, just during the time of the Industrial Revolution, I always think that firstly, progress is going to happen. But yes, there's a short term adjustment period, and we've already spoken about how to mitigate those.
Yeah, this question I got it from your TEDx talk as well. And coming to one more, you have delivered two TEDx talks, and in one you spoke about Stone Age to modern marketing. So I was quite interested with that talk as well, as we are continuously innovating. Even today, what exists may not exist tomorrow. So in that field, how did marketing evolve from Stone Age to like present day marketing or modern marketing?
I mean, you're seeing that for yourself, right? Like, marketing went from being a lot more mass to a lot more personalized, right? It's lesser about television advertising and hoardings and stuff like that that you see outside, to those platforms also being a lot more relevant to any game that you see that you're playing today. You'll get an ad that's relevant for you, right? Like, let's say if you're browsing sneakers, then you'll get an ad to sort of buy whenever Nike sort of releases the latest sneaker, right? So I think the evolution has become that of personalization, where marketing is, yes, it is intrusive in the way that it has now come to your pocket, but it is more helpful and beneficial to you because it's showing you something that is most relevant for the particular need that you were searching it for. But of course, you need a human being to decide whether he wants to make a purchase or not.
Mm. Yes, that's quite interesting. And we gone to through many questions, and now I just wanted to have a surprise round, which is a rapid fire. But I don't want it to be quite rapid. You're free to express your opinions or you can explanations for each question. So first, to start with, in one of your TEDx talks, you played a game where you hummed a campaign or an ad, and you need people to guess it. So we'll start with the same game. So first, I will be saying a marketing campaign, and you need to guess the brand which did that.
Done. I hope I'm good at it.
To start with, first one, I wrote it myself, but you have already used it in one of your answers. So it's just do it.
Nike. Yeah, I think, like I said, right, the simplicity of it just covers it all, right? it talks very little about what Nike does as a company of making shoes, but more in terms of the larger thing that Nike sort of stands for, that inspiring you to get out of your house and do something. That's what it sort of began with.
Great. And the second question is the real beauty.
Oh, that's a tough one. Is that Dove?
Yes.
Nice. I think Dove has also had like pretty iconic campaigns, right? I think they're often sort of seen as talking about beauty in a different context. And I think their evolution of a product and a brand has been very interesting from that point of view.
Great. And the next one is a quite interesting one, and you very much related to We Miss You Too campaign.
We miss you too. Is that Maggie?
Yes.
I think Maggie, by the way, has become a Harvard Business Review case study, if I'm not mistaken, where a lot of business schools actually talk about consumer love for a product and then getting it back onto the shelves, even though there were harmful connotations to it, or at least that's what came out in the media. But I think consumer love for it got the brand to think right and then come back with the product in the right way it should have.
And for Maggie, it was a quick response. Like it
Yeah,
didn't
and
take much
one
time
consumer
to.
love, one consumer love instantly.
Yes. And coming to the next second question, what is your favorite marketing campaign?
I think it's the Think Different campaign that I talk often about by Apple, right? I think it was just too iconic to sort of be forgotten. It instantly, even today, many years later from when that campaign was launched, it just talks about how the brand got everything right, right? In terms of elevating itself to being way ahead of its competitors at that time, to just, like I said, two words that got you to just think differently about the brand, about the product. I think that is one of my all-time favorites.
Great.
Closer to home, closer to India, I think is probably the Cadbury girl that sort of opens up and dances out into the cricket stadium.
Great. And the next question is, name a brand which has no haters.
Which has no haters. Uh, I think that is very difficult in a world that somehow has a lot of pessimists as well. Um, I guess Maggie would have been one of those brands, right? I mean, even though it sort of came into the media for some of the wrong reasons, consumer love just got it back.
Yeah, except from the competitors, consumer love the brand. Even it went to 60% market share in within like month.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. And the next question is, who is your inspiration to pursue advertising?
I think that's a great question. But for me, I think the closest of home would probably be my father. My father was in the field of advertising when I was born, and I remember going to a lot of his company events, his pitches, and I think that inspired me to sort of look at advertising as a career. And I think that's when, when you're in the eighth standard, seventh standard, everyone's often confused about what is the sixth subject I should select. At least in ICSE schools, we had that question that came to us. And for me, very early on, I was able to make that career choice just because of the exposure that I had by then.
Great. And the next question, I would be naming a brand, and you need to explain what is that special thing in that brand, maybe in their marketing campaigns or in their style of advertising, which made it successful. So the first we'll go with cred.
I think the fact that they were not so orthodox, right? Like I think that's what made everyone even think of cred. And then contrary to that, what Magic Pin sort of did to sort of take a dig at cred, I think that was a very interesting dynamic as well. But yeah, they used iconic players. They recreated a lot of nostalgia. I think the nostalgia effect that cred played on was what got people to recognize the brand.
And what I feel is they never had a second thought. If they feel something is clickable or exciting, they just go with it.
Yeah. Well, another company that I love for doing just that is Swiggy. Look at and Zomato as well, right? Just look at the way their posts keep getting traction, because I think they make it very relatable and topical as well.
And Zomato was my next question to
Oh,
say. And for Zomato, I would also say their notifications. I love their notifications.
Yeah. Exactly. And talk about that, right? So you said that where has marketing evolved and how has moved from the Stone Age? Just look at the notifications that Zomato says you. It's almost as if you want to click onto that notification and place an order.
Yes. Okay, the next brand is Pidilite.
Pidilite. I think the theme that they sort of have of in a way building the framework of India, right? In that sense, that's a larger motivation of which they sort of go to. I think that's very interesting from that point of view. And Mazbuti wala jod, I think that's something that everyone sort of associates with.
And there was one ad where a person is fishing, and for that fishing rod, he do that Fevicol thing and all. That is also quite interesting ads. They had very interesting ads.
Created by one of the icons, Piyush Pandey, of course.
Great. And the next one is Amul.
Amul, I think Amul is again another brand like Swiggy and Zomato that's always topical in a classy sense as well as in a with a lot of wit. I think the agency as well as the brand does a great job in making their ads. I think any news, any international news, earlier even before memes became a thing, I think was the Amul ad that you would see on the in your newspaper or on hoardings.
Yes. And the next question is, what is the most preferred social media platform by you if you want to launch an ad?
Oh, I think, but doesn't exist in India. I think TikTok is very relevant because you're seeing. I mean, it's not just about the fact that there's a lot of younger population on that platform that is regularly engaging and interacting, right? So I think when you look at platforms, you look at it as an evolution of engagement. There are some platforms that are high engagement. There are some platforms that are less reactive but more informative and so on and so forth, right? And when you're typically launching a blad, you want that reciprocation of energy, you want that vibrancy, you want things that get people to participate, like your reels and all of the things that you do. I think TikTok is a great platform for that. Instagram, of course, is another key contender in that sense. So if you were sort of launching a brand today based on just surely engagement and where you sort of get that traction, I think these two platforms stand out.
You talked about TikTok, so it's not available now in India. So, as an economist, also, if I ask you, is that ban had a valid reason, or are there real data privacy issues or concerns over the ban?
In the larger scheme of things, right, I don't think it mattered much to the economy that, let's say, TikTok was put on hold in that sense. The platform is doing very well elsewhere. But it's I think the competitors of TikTok, India is a market that constantly evolves and there's no dearth of competition out here. I think the competition is also trying to create smart products very similar to that as well. So, yeah.
To take it in a positive sense, we can say TikTok created a habit out of there, and other apps are following and capitalizing those habits and all.
I think it created a culture rather of influencers in a different light. And you saw Instagram sort of really mushroom through that. TikTok influencers are massive as well. And so also today you have an entire ecosystem of micro influencers that are on platforms like Josh, that are on platforms like Chingari, like any or Ku or any of those competitive platforms as well, right? And the fact that in a way micro influencers create their own jobs in that sense, I think it sort of at least promotes creation from in that context.
Great. And my next question is, one of your proudest achievements?
One of my proudest achievements, I think it's the fact that me, along with the data sciences team of Dentsu that I used to lead, created products that instead of being imported from other countries were actually sent out to other countries. And I think it's a very interesting question and something very close to my heart, and definitely something that I wouldn't have been able to achieve without my team. But the fact that earlier when you talk about like products, right, even especially in advertising, in terms of advertising technology or marketing technology, the largest brands that you hear of were probably based outside of India, right? often when, let's say, Facebook or Google were to launch a product, they'll probably launch it in the West or in a market different from India in that sense, unless it's like a specialized feature for the market. And I think that's the mission, that we wanted to create products born out of India, sent to other countries. And by the way, by the time I was done with my stint at running the data sciences team of Dentsu, we actually took a product built from scratch to 32 countries of Dentsu globally, right? And I think that would probably be my biggest achievement.
Great. To say, I have a question on this, and which I would like to ask after the rapid fire.
Sure.
Yeah. And your next question is, what is your favorite musical instrument?
My favorite musical instrument is a piano. I actually started playing that. I've always had a good ear for music, or so I'd like to think. And I started playing the piano by ear first at a very early age, until my parents actually recognized that I did love that instrument and then sent me for classes.
Great. And you are a person who say we should have a physical activity every day. So considering that, what would you prefer, either gym or running?
Running for sure. I think the way it clears up your mind. I'm very fortunate to live in South Bombay, where Marine Drive is like a 5 minute run for me. So I kind of love the morning seaside runs. Nothing hits your face better than salty but fresh air in that sense. And I think that it just gets my juices flowing, and that's something that is very core to my to the way I start my day.
Great. And my last question in this rapid fire is, I know the answer, but I just wanted to get it from you. If not an economist or an advertising expert, what would you be? A doctor or a teacher?
I think teaching is something that's very close to my heart. I think that's something that you also did know in my answers before. So teaching is something that is very close to me. Till date, whenever I get time on weekends, I'm at any of the institutes giving a talk or having sessions like this, which are close to my heart. I think my mother was a teacher, her mother was a teacher, and I think it's, in a way, it's just in the blood. But I think there's something so noble about that profession, that you're able to influence minds, you're able to present a different point of view, and you're just able to give back to society. And that's why I love it.
Great. And I also mentioned doctor in this because somewhere I got to know that you wanted to be a doctor in your childhood, but biology didn't work it out. And that was a reason and all.
So I actually did well in biology, by the way. But yeah, I think early on, every kid wanted to be two things, either a doctor or an astronaut. Medical is something that I was very intrigued by very early on. And a neuroscientist is one of the professions that I wanted to sort of pursue at a very young age. But then I sort of ruled it out as my love for advertising grew.
Great. So with this, we end the rapid fire round. I have a couple of questions to ask.
Sure.
As I already mentioned, you always wanted India to be a hub of innovation and a center for testing all the product beta tests types and all. So what are the reasons that you saw in India that you believe will make a center for all these things?
I think in a way, the 2 years of COVID did prove that, right? Like, look at the amount of startups that we've created in this ecosystem. Earlier, India was known to be a land of a failure of startups because we had way too many of them, and not many of them even reaching unicorn status. And today, I think the game is completely changed. We have more than 42 unicorns in the last 8 to 12 months or so, right? And just the amount of the sheer volume of capital that is flowing into the country, I think it'll be a stupid thing for any country to not invest in India first as opposed to the rest of it, right? And those are trends that I saw very early on. I think our talent is young, our talent is hungry. We want to try new things. We find a way to sort of be cockroaches in a world that is full of turmoil, and in a way, survival instinct kicks in, and that's why I sort of use the term cockroach, because we're very resilient from that sense. And I think that just that raw hunger and that raw will to sort of be the global power, I think that's something that Indians should pride themselves off. I think kudos to all the startup founders that have actually taken the first step and courage into building companies in a non-digital and then a digital India. So I think that's what I sort of see in India as well. And even now, the startup that I joined is sort of founded in India, and we're still continuing our mission of exporting technology to the world.
Great. Okay, to continue with the previous question, you told you're working in a startup based out of India, but in the same startup, you have been handling international roles, and also you have been handling teams where people have experienced more than you. So it's often a challenge. I experienced it when I was a shop floor operations manager at Aditya Birla. So I used to deal with people sometimes even double my age. So dealing with people who has more experience than you is a little challenging. So, did you ever face some challenge when you deal with people, when you deal with such people, or how to exactly handle such people?
Not very much, actually. Like, I don't think ageism should be an argument that's ever made. I always feel that I think background also from which people come from, be it educational or anything, right, doesn't really matter. What matters is the skills that you bring to the table, whether you're able to fix the solution. In fact, I've been in leadership roles where people under me were rewarded a lot more financially than I was. And those things don't really matter, because it's about raising a team, building a culture together, and striving forward in a mission that you jointly believe. In that sense, I would hire people that, whether they're older, younger, none of that really matters. Like I said, right, you're looking for problem solvers because you're solving problems that are hard to otherwise solve for. And you need the right chemistry, you need the right people, you need the right skill sets to actually go through it. Where that comes from hardly matters.
Great. And with all this context, and you have an excellent way of speaking and excellent way of explaining things. And for your phenomenal work, you have also received many awards and have been featured in many 30 under 30 lists like Forbes, Impact, and Social Samosa and all. So apart from your 4D mantra, I just want you to explain that 4D mantra as well, where you said devotion to duty determines your destiny. And I also want to know what is that quality in you that made these recognitions reach you. And for someone aiming big at a younger age, what would your advice be?
Right. I think that I'm going to address the latter part of that question first, and then I go into the motto that I strongly believe in. I think when it comes to achievements, right? I think in some ways you shouldn't drive yourself towards it, but it's a good pat on the back when it does happen. And I think that's the way I sort of viewed those awards. I've been lucky. Plainly put, I think that's how it is. But the one thing that does keep me going is passion. I'm deeply passionate about anything that I sort of do, and that's the one advice that I give the many that actually ask me for advice. Like, whatever you pick, make sure that you're deeply passionate about it, because this is going to be where you're going to invest yourself in wholly and solely, right? And if you don't have that passion, if you're not driven towards something that wants you to turn on, like when people ask me that you work really hard and you must have worked really hard to sort of get to where you are, I feel that I've not worked a single day, because it's just been out of love. I created the data sciences team. I joined the data sciences team and co-founded it out of love, something that I was passionate about. I treat my team as my family because they are in many ways, right? And that's something that should motivate you to opening your laptop every single morning, not because you have to work or something like that, right? And I feel that people talk about work-life balance. I think all of that sort of pans out when you're passionate about something and you find a way to sort of manage everything in that stride. I hope I answered that question. And coming to the mantra, and that's what, right? One of my biggest inspirations, my dad actually, when I was in the third standard, inculcated this into me. And he said that devotion to duty determines your destiny, right? Whether you're a painter, whether you're a farmer, whether you're in advertising, whether you're working at Aditya Birla, wherever it is that you're working, just make sure that, again, you're deeply passionate and devoted to whatever you're doing. The rest will follow. Your accolades will follow, your success will follow. You get the right team to build exciting things with. All of that sort of comes from just that devotion. Be deeply devoted and passionate to whatever you do, and do it with the best that you sort of have to offer.
Great. That was indeed interesting and informative. And your answers were also very crisp but very much detailed. So before we end this podcast, any last advice for our viewers?
I think one thing that firstly, I want to thank you guys for having this. I think it's important to have that connect and candid conversations. There's very little of that that we genuinely sort of get to hear. So thank you for creating this. The one thing that I'd like to ask people, right, is or rather leave people with the message with is always, firstly, I think passion is something that I spoke of, but always be on a learning curve. Be willing to throw yourself into uncomfortable situations, and you might just find a hidden talent that you never sort of expose yourself to earlier. So just be on that path, just focus on learning, focus on growth, and I think the rest will follow.
Great. Through this conversation, I got to know more about you, and I enjoyed this podcast as well. And thank you for being with us today, Abhinay.
It was a pleasure. Thanks.
And sir, I definitely wanted to meet you in person and have you at our Hilltop campus whenever you're available. Okay, viewers, that's all for today. Keep watching the Big Small Talk. Thank you.